My name is Pearl, and I'm 57 years old. For most of my life, I believed that love and sacrifice for family would always be returned in kind. I raised my daughter Madison as a single mother, working double shifts at our local bank, saving every penny to give her the life I never had. We lived in a cozy little house in Ohio, where I thought we'd built a foundation of trust and respect. But sometimes the people closest to you can surprise you in ways you never imagined. I never thought the same hands that once held mine when she was afraid of thunderstorms would one day pack my bags and throw them out the front door. Before I share what happened on the darkest day of my life, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button if you've ever felt unappreciated by family, and don't forget to subscribe, because this story has a twist that'll restore your faith in justice. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how karma works in mysterious ways. Looking back, I realized the signs were there long before that terrible day. My journey began 25 years ago when my husband Robert passed away from a sudden heart attack. Madison was only 12, and I made a promise to myself that she would never feel like she was missing anything because she didn't have a father. I worked at First National Bank of Dayton for 25 years, starting as a teller and working my way up to assistant manager. Every paycheck, I'd split my money carefully. Half went to our monthly expenses, and the other half went straight into savings for Madison's future. I wore the same clothes for years, skipped vacations, and never bought myself anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. But seeing Madison succeed in school and eventually get into Ohio State University made every sacrifice worth it. Madison was such a sweet child. She'd help me with household chores without being asked, and we'd spend Sunday mornings making pancakes together while listening to old country music on the radio. She was my best friend, my pride and joy, and the reason I got up every morning with purpose. Things started changing during her sophomore year at college. She met Derek at a marketing seminar, and suddenly her weekend calls home became shorter and less frequent. When she did visit, she seemed distracted, always texting or talking about this amazing guy who had such big plans for the future. Derek was certainly charming when she first brought him home for Thanksgiving. He was 28, 3 years older than Madison, and had this confident way of speaking that made everything sound like a business presentation. He wore expensive suits and drove a leased BMW that he was very proud of. But there was something about the way he looked around our modest home that made me uncomfortable. It wasn't appreciation or curiosity. It was more like he was appraising real estate, calculating square footage and potential value. During that first visit, I caught him taking photos of our living room and kitchen with his phone. When I asked why, he laughed it off, saying he wanted to show his business partner how cozy small-town homes could be. The explanation didn't sit right with me, but Madison seemed so happy that I kept my concerns to myself. After graduation, Madison announced their engagement. I was thrilled for her happiness, but the wedding planning process revealed more of Derek's true nature. He insisted on an expensive venue, premium catering, and a guest list that included mostly his business associates. When I mentioned my budget constraints, he suggested I take out a loan because investing in Madison's happiness should be a priority. I ended up spending my entire retirement savings, nearly $30,000, to give them the wedding of their dreams. 6 months after the wedding, Derek lost his marketing job. Madison called me in tears, explaining that they couldn't afford their apartment anymore and needed a place to stay temporarily. My heart broke, hearing her so upset so naturally. I offered them my spare bedroom. "Just until you get back on your feet," I said. "Family helps family." Derek moved in with 3 suitcases and a laptop, plus several boxes of what he called business materials. Within the first week, he had transformed my living room into his home office, spreading papers across my coffee table and taking conference calls at all hours. He never asked permission. He just assumed it was acceptable. I continued waking up at 5:30 every morning to make breakfast for all three of us before heading to work. In the evenings, I'd come home exhausted, only to find dirty dishes in the sink, and Derek lounging in my recliner, expecting dinner to be ready soon. Madison, who used to help with everything, now spent most of her time supporting Derek's job search efforts or running errands for his various business ideas. The temporary arrangement stretched from weeks into months. Every time I gently asked about their moving timeline, Derek would launch into detailed explanations about market conditions, networking opportunities, or promising leads that just needed a little more time to develop. Madison would nod along, fully supportive of his reasoning. During this period, I started buying lottery tickets at Rosa's corner store. Rosa was a 62-year-old woman from Guatemala who had owned the store for 15 years. She was warm and motherly, and our brief conversations during my weekly ticket purchases became the highlight of my week. I played the same numbers every time the birthdays of Madison and my late husband Robert. It was just $2 a week, a tiny indulgence that gave me something to look forward to. After 3 months of the temporary arrangement, subtle changes began appearing throughout my house. I came home from work one Tuesday to find that Derek had rearranged the living room furniture without asking. My grandmother's antique lamp had been moved to the basement, replaced by a modern floor lamp he claimed provided better lighting for his video calls. When I mentioned that I'd prefer to be consulted about changes to my home, Derek smiled patronizingly and said, "Pearl, we're just trying to make the space more functional for everyone. You'll get used to it." Madison stood beside him, nodding in agreement instead of defending my position as the homeowner. The financial expectations began shortly after. Derek suggested that since they were contributing to the household by doing occasional grocery shopping, I should cover a larger portion of the utilities and groceries. "It only makes sense," he explained. "You were paying these bills anyway, and we're barely using any additional resources." The logic was twisted, but Madison supported his reasoning, so I agreed to avoid conflict. My personal space started shrinking as well. Derek needed the dining room table for his business plans, so family meals moved to the kitchen counter or TV trays in the living room. When my sister Dorothy wanted to visit for her birthday, Derek suggested we meet at a restaurant instead, because he had an important presentation to prepare and needed absolute quiet in the house. "Mom, Derek's career is really taking off," Madison explained when I expressed frustration. "These next few months are crucial for his success. Can't Dorothy visit another time?" I noticed that my longtime friends from the bank were no longer welcome either. When I mentioned having my monthly book club meeting at the house, Derek immediately objected, citing confidential business materials that couldn't be exposed to strangers. Madison supported his concerns, suggesting I join a book club at the library instead. My health was declining during this period as well. The arthritis in my hands and knees was getting worse, partly due to stress, but also because I was doing all the household cleaning and cooking. I needed to start physical therapy, but every time I asked Madison to drive me to appointments, she'd explain how busy Derek was with networking events and job interviews that required her support. "Can't you take the bus, Mum?" she asked one morning while packing Derek's lunch. I know it's not ideal, but Derek's meeting today could really change our future. The bus route to the physical therapy clinic required 2 transfers and took nearly 2 hours each way. I was managing this journey twice a week, carrying my purse and therapy equipment, feeling invisible in my own family. During one of my lottery ticket purchases, Rosa noticed that I seemed more tired than usual. "Everything okay at home, Pearl?" she asked in her gentle way. I found myself opening up to her about the living situation. Rosa listened without judgment, occasionally shaking her head in sympathy. "Family is supposed to lift you up, not wear you down," she said softly. "You're a good woman, Pearl. Don't forget that." The first major confrontation happened on a rainy Thursday evening. I had worked a particularly difficult day dealing with customer complaints and a computer system failure. All I wanted was to relax in my own living room and watch my favorite cooking show. But when I got home, Derek was conducting a video conference with potential investors using my TV and sound system for his presentation. He held up his hand to silence me when I walked in, then mouthed, "One more hour," while continuing his business discussion. I stood in my own entryway, tired and hungry, waiting for permission to enter my living room. When the call finally ended, I gathered my courage to address the situation. "Derek, I appreciate that you're working hard, but I need some advance notice when you're using the common areas for business. This is still my home." His response shocked me. "Pearl, I think you need to consider the bigger picture here. Madison and I are building something important, and we need space to operate. Maybe it's time to think about downsizing to a senior community where you'd have fewer responsibilities, and we could have the room we need to succeed." Madison, instead of defending me or acknowledging my rights as the homeowner, nodded thoughtfully. "Derek has a point, Mum. This house is getting too big for one person, and senior communities have activities and healthcare services that might be better for you." I stared at my daughter in disbelief. The house wasn't too big for me. It was too small for 3 adults, especially when 2 of them were acting like entitled house guests. But seeing Madison's complete alignment with Derek's perspective made me realize that I was losing my daughter to his manipulation. That night, I lay in bed listening to them discuss my future in the next room, talking about what's best for everyone, without including me in the conversation. For the first time since they'd moved in, I began to understand that this wasn't a temporary arrangement. They were planning to take over my home completely. The next few months brought an escalation of unreasonable demands and controlling behaviors that made me feel like a prisoner in my own home. Derek instituted a house schedule that revolved entirely around his needs. I couldn't use the washing machine during his work hours because the noise disturbed his concentration. Television watching was prohibited after 8 p.m. because he needed to review business documents in complete silence. My kitchen privileges became restricted as well. Derek required advance notice if I planned to cook anything that might produce strong smells while he was on important calls. This meant my Sunday tradition of making pot roast had to be eliminated along with most of the comfort foods I'd been preparing for decades. In March, Madison announced her pregnancy. Instead of feeling pure joy at the prospect of becoming a grandmother, I felt a growing sense of dread. During the announcement dinner, Derek immediately began discussing space requirements for the baby. "We're going to need a nursery, obviously, sir," he said, cutting into his steak. "And the baby can't be around too much noise or disruption during development. Pearl, you understand that babies need stable, quiet environments, right?" The implication was clear. My presence in the house was being framed as potentially harmful to my future grandchild. Madison rubbed her still flat belly and smiled at Derek adoringly. "We want to do everything right for our baby." 2 weeks later, Derek approached me with a financial request that crossed every boundary I had left. He needed to borrow $5,000 for what he called a guaranteed return investment opportunity that would set them up for life. When I explained that my retirement savings had already been depleted for their wedding and current living expenses, he became persistent and manipulative. "Pearl, this is your daughter's future we're talking about, and your grandchild's future. Don't you want them to have security?" He showed me charts and graphs on his laptop, explaining complex investment strategies that made my head spin. "I'll pay you back with interest within 6 months. You have my word." Madison sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder, looking at me with expectant hope. "Mom, Derek's really good with money. This could help all of us." Against my better judgment, I withdrew $5,000 from my emergency fund and gave it to Derek. He promised to set up a formal loan agreement, but weeks passed without any paperwork. When I brought it up, he'd always have an excuse about being busy with more pressing matters. My isolation from the outside world became nearly complete during this period. Dorothy was no longer welcome in my home, and Derek strongly discouraged me from visiting her. Pearl, you need to be careful about discussing our private family business with outsiders, he warned. People might not understand our temporary living arrangement and could get the wrong idea. The wrong idea about what I wondered, but I was too exhausted to argue. The house renovations began without any consultation. Derek hired contractors to update the bathroom and kitchen, claiming these improvements would benefit everyone. When the workers arrived and asked for my signature on the work orders, Derek smoothly explained that I had already approved everything, and they should direct all questions to him. I watched strangers tearing apart rooms I had carefully decorated over 25 years, installing fixtures I hadn't chosen, and charging expenses to my credit card without permission. When I confronted Derek about the unauthorized charges, he acted surprised and hurt by my accusations. Pearl, we discussed this. You said the house needed updating, and I took initiative to help you. I'm trying to make your home more valuable and comfortable. Why are you being so ungrateful? Madison supported his version of events, insisting that I had agreed to the renovations during a conversation I couldn't remember having. I began questioning my own memory and wondering if stress was affecting my mental clarity. The breaking point approached when I discovered real estate brochures hidden in Derek's business materials. He had been researching the market value of my house and had contacted 3 different agents for informal appraisals. One agent had even visited the house during my work hours for a consultation that Derek claimed was about general market conditions. When I confronted them both about this violation of trust, they turned the situation around to make me the problem. Derek spoke to me like I was a confused child who didn't understand adult business concepts. Pearl, knowledge is power in real estate. I'm trying to help you understand your options. You're not getting any younger, and planning ahead is responsible. Would you rather wait until you're in crisis to make important decisions? Madison nodded along, adding, Mom, we're just looking out for you. Derek knows about these things, and I trust his judgment. The trust I had spent 57 years building with my daughter was crumbling, and she couldn't even see it happening. Rosa had become my only confidant, the single person who listened to my concerns without making me feel crazy or ungrateful. During my weekly lottery ticket purchases, I'd share small details about my deteriorating home situation, and Rosa would shake her head with understanding sympathy. That man is no good, Pearl, Rosa said one afternoon as she handed me my ticket. A real man doesn't take over a woman's house and turn her own daughter against her. You're stronger than you know, Mia. Don't let them break your spirit. Her words gave me comfort, but I felt trapped with no clear way forward. Derek and Madison had systematically isolated me, taken control of my finances and living space, and convinced my daughter that their manipulative behavior was actually care and concern for my well-being. The final ultimatum was approaching, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. The morning that changed my life forever started like any other Wednesday, except my arthritis was flaring up worse than usual. I had barely slept because of the pain in my knees and the stress that seemed to be eating away at my insides. I made coffee and breakfast for Derek and Madison, as had become my unwelcome routine, before limping to my bedroom to get ready for what I thought would be just another difficult day. Derek was waiting for me when I came out of the bathroom. He was sitting on my bed with a folder in his hands and an expression that I had never seen before. It wasn't the fake charm or patronizing concern he usually wore. This was cold, calculated, and final. Pearl, we need to talk. Madison and I have made a decision about your living situation. Madison appeared in the doorway behind him, looking uncomfortable, but determined. She avoided making eye contact with me as Derek opened his folder and pulled out several brochures and printed papers. We've found some excellent assisted living facilities in the area. Derek continued, spreading the materials across my bedspread, like he was presenting a business proposal. There's also a very nice senior community near Dorothy in Florida. We think it's time for you to seriously consider moving to a place that's better suited to your needs. I stared at him in shock. Derek, this is my house. I've lived here for 23 years. I paid the mortgage every month for 23 years. You can't just decide where I'm going to live. Madison finally spoke up, her voice shaky, but rehearsed. Mom, Derek and I have been talking a lot about this. With the baby coming, we need stability and space. This house is getting too much for you to handle, and we think you'd be happier in a community with people your own age and medical care nearby. Too much for me to handle, I repeated, my voice rising. Madison, I've been taking care of this house and everyone in it for months, while you two have contributed nothing but demands and criticism. Derek's mask slipped completely. Pearl, let's be honest about your situation. You're 67 years old. I'm 57, I corrected sharply. You're dealing with health issues, you're retired, and you're living alone in a house that's too big for one person. Madison and I are young, starting a family, and we need space to build our future. We're prepared to help you transition to a more appropriate living situation, but we need this house. The audacity of his words hit me like a physical blow. You need my house. Madison stepped forward, reaching for my hand. Mum, please try to understand. Derek has been researching all the options, and there are some really nice places. I pulled my hand away. Have you both lost your minds? This is not your house to redistribute. I own this property. I pay all the bills. I've been supporting both of you for months, and now you're telling me I need to leave my own home so you can have it. Derek stood up and moved closer, his tone shifting to something darker. Pearl, I think you need to consider some practical realities here. You're showing signs of confusion and memory problems. Just yesterday, you forgot that you had approved the kitchen renovation. You're having trouble managing your medications, your finances, and your daily responsibilities. That's not true, I protested. But even as I said it, I wondered if my recent stress and confusion had been more visible than I realized. Mum, Madison said softly, we're worried about you. What if you fall and no one finds you? What if you forget to turn off the stove? In a senior community, there would be people checking on you every day. Derek pulled out more papers from his folder. We've already spoken with a social worker about elder care concerns. There are protocols for situations where family members notice declining independence and judgment. We want to handle this privately as a family, but there are other options if necessary. The threat was unmistakable. If I didn't cooperate with their plan, they would pursue legal action, questioning my mental competency. I looked at Madison, desperately hoping to see some sign that my daughter would stand up for me, but she was staring at the floor, completely aligned with Derek's manipulation. We've already packed some of your essential items, Derek continued, gesturing toward the hallway, where I could see 3 suitcases sitting by the front door. Dorothy is expecting your call this afternoon. You can stay with her while you decide between the assisted living facilities we've researched. My entire life, everything I had worked for, sacrificed for, and built over decades, was being reduced to 3 suitcases by people who had been living in my house rent-free for nearly a year. You packed my belongings, I whispered. Madison finally looked up, tears in her eyes. Mum, we just want what's best for you. Derek says that staying here isn't safe anymore. And with the baby coming, we need to think about creating a healthy environment. Get out, I said quietly. Pearl, I think you're having an emotional reaction, Derek started. Get out of my room, I screamed with a force that surprised all of us. Both of you get out of my bedroom right now. They backed toward the door, Derek looking satisfied that he had provoked me into what he could later describe as an unstable outburst. Madison looked genuinely distressed, but not enough to question what they were doing to me. I sat on my bed, surrounded by brochures for senior living facilities, staring at my packed suitcases in the hallway, trying to process that my own daughter had just evicted me from my home. After an hour of crying and shock, I called Dorothy. Through tears, I explained that I needed a place to stay temporarily due to family complications. Dorothy, who had never liked Derek, immediately offered her guest room and said she would come pick me up. Before Dorothy arrived, I made one stop. I drove to Rosa's corner store, my hands shaking as I walked to the counter. Rosa took one look at my red eyes and tear-stained cheeks and came around the counter to hug me. Pearl. What happened? Through broken sentences, I told her about the morning's events. Rosa listened with growing anger, occasionally muttering in Spanish. When I finished, she shook her head sadly. Those people are not family, Pearl. Family doesn't throw you away like garbage when they want something you have. I bought my regular lottery ticket, playing the same numbers I had chosen every week for 3 years. It seemed pointless now, but it was the one normal thing I could still do. That evening at Dorothy's house, I sat in her kitchen while she made chamomile tea and cursed Derek's name in colourful language that would have shocked our mother. I pulled out my lottery ticket mechanically, not expecting anything, just going through the motions of checking the numbers on my phone. The first number matched, then the second. By the fourth matching number, my heart was pounding. When all 6 numbers aligned perfectly with the winning combination, I stared at the screen in disbelief. $2.3 million. The jackpot was $2.3 million, and I held the winning ticket. Dorothy was still talking about getting a lawyer to fight Derek's manipulation when I interrupted her. Dorothy, I need to be alone for a few minutes. I need to think. I went to the guest bedroom and sat on the bed, staring at the lottery ticket in my trembling hands. Less than 12 hours ago, Derek and Madison had thrown me out of my own home because they believed I was a powerless old woman with no options. They had no idea that I now had the resources to change everything. For the first time in months, I smiled. The next few weeks at Dorothy's house were carefully orchestrated theatre. During phone calls with Madison, I played the role of a devastated, displaced mother who was struggling to adjust to her new reality. I let my voice shake when I talked about viewing assisted living facilities, and I allowed long pauses that suggested depression and confusion. Madison called every few days, and our conversations were awkward surface-level exchanges. She would ask how I was adjusting and update me about her pregnancy symptoms and Derek's latest business prospects. Never once did she apologize for what they had done, or suggest that I could come home. The house was now completely theirs in her mind. While maintaining this facade, I was secretly busy rebuilding my life on my own terms. My first step was driving to the state capital to claim my lottery prize. I chose the lump sum payment option and walked away with $1.4 million after taxes. The lottery office provided financial planning resources, and I immediately scheduled meetings with a lawyer and a certified financial planner who specialized in sudden wealth management. Dorothy knew something was different about my demeanor, but when she asked, I just said I was feeling more hopeful about my future. I wasn't ready to share the truth yet, even with my sister. My new lawyer, Janet Morrison, was a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in estate planning and elder law. When I explained my situation with Derek and Madison, she was immediately concerned about financial elder abuse and property manipulation. She assured me that as the sole owner of my house, Derek and Madison had no legal rights to evict me or make decisions about my living situation. Pearl, what they did to you was illegal, Janet explained during our second meeting. You have every right to reclaim your property immediately. We can serve them with eviction papers today if you want. But I had a different plan in mind. My financial advisor, Robert Chen, helped me set up multiple bank accounts and investment portfolios to manage my new wealth responsibly. We discussed long-term financial security, charitable giving, and the lifestyle changes I wanted to make. Robert was impressed by my conservative approach and practical thinking about money management. Most lottery winners want to make flashy purchases immediately, so, he noted. Your focus on stability and planning suggests you'll do very well with this windfall. While Derek and Madison settled into their comfortable routine in my former home, I was secretly house hunting in the same neighborhood where Madison had grown up. I wanted to stay close to my roots and the community I loved, but I also wanted something special that would represent my new independence. I found the perfect property after 2 weeks of searching. It was a beautiful Victorian house, just 8 blocks from my old home, with original hardwood floors, stained glass windows, and a wraparound porch that overlooked a gorgeous garden. The house had 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and enough space for me to entertain friends and family on my own terms. The asking price was $350,000. I offered $400,000 in cash with a 10-day closing timeline. The sellers accepted immediately. During this period, I occasionally drove past my old house to observe how Derek and Madison were living. Derek had installed a new mailbox with both their names on it, but not mine. He had also placed a home office sign in the front yard and was using my former address for his business correspondence. I saw them coming and going as if they owned the place, Derek washing his BMW in my driveway, and Madison planting flowers in the garden I had maintained for 23 years. They looked comfortable and settled, completely confident that their manipulation had succeeded. Through Rosa, who remained my closest confidant, I learned that Derek had been telling neighbors that I had moved to Florida to be closer to family, and that they were taking care of the house for me. He had even suggested to Mrs. Patterson next door that they might be purchasing the property from me soon. Rosa was the only person who knew about my lottery win, and she was thrilled to see me taking control of my situation. "You're going to show them Pearl," she said one afternoon as I bought a celebration lottery ticket. "Sometimes the best revenge is just living well." The closing on my new house went smoothly, and I arranged for professional movers to handle the transition. I also put a down payment on a small condo in Florida as a backup plan and vacation home near Dorothy. Having multiple options gave me a sense of security I hadn't felt in years. My new home was everything I had dreamed of. I furnished it with quality pieces that reflected my personal style, rather than compromise with anyone else's preferences. I set up a reading room, a craft space, and a guest bedroom for Dorothy's visits. The kitchen was spacious enough for cooking large family meals, and the dining room had a table that could seat 8 people comfortably. Most importantly, every decision about my new home was entirely my own. The final phase of my plan required careful timing. I needed Derek and Madison to feel completely secure in their assumption that they had won our power struggle. Their overconfidence would make their eventual shock even more devastating. I scheduled the eviction notice to be delivered by Janet's office on a Tuesday morning, while Madison was at her prenatal appointment and Derek was likely to be home alone. I wanted Derek to receive the news first because I knew he would panic and reveal his true character to Madison when she returned. Everything was in place. My new life was ready to begin, and Derek and Madison were about to learn that underestimating someone can have serious consequences. The reckoning was about to arrive. Tuesday morning arrived with clear skies and a sense of poetic justice that made me feel more alive than I had in months. I was in my beautiful new kitchen, arranging fresh flowers from my garden, when my phone rang. Janet Morrison was calling to confirm that the eviction notice had been served. "The process server delivered the documents to Derek 20 minutes ago," she reported. He was quite shocked and asked several questions about legal options for fighting the eviction. I informed him that as tenants without a lease in someone else's property, he and Madison have no legal standing to contest your decision. I thanked Janet and hung up, then settled into my comfortable reading chair to wait for Derek's phone call. It came within 15 minutes. Pearl. Derek's voice was higher than usual, strained with panic he was trying to control. What is this legal document about eviction? There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, Derek, I replied calmly. I'm reclaiming my house. You and Madison have 30 days to find alternative housing. But you can't just kick us out. We've been living here for almost a year. We have tenant rights. Tenants pay rent, Derek. Tenants have leases. You've been house guests who overstayed their welcome. I let that sink in for a moment. Actually, house guests would be more accurate since house guests are usually invited and appreciated. Pearl, you're not thinking clearly. Where are you going to live? You're in Florida with Dorothy, remember? You don't need this house anymore. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Derek, I need to correct a misunderstanding you've been operating under. I didn't move to Florida because I had to. I moved temporarily because I chose to, and now I'm choosing to come home. That's impossible. You sold the house. You said you sold it to a cash buyer. I had never said I sold the house, but Derek's memory was apparently as unreliable as he claimed mine was. I never sold my house, Derek. I still own it. I still pay all the bills, and I still have every legal right to decide who lives there. You and Madison are no longer welcome. The silence on the other end lasted nearly 30 seconds. When Derek spoke again, his voice had changed completely. The charming manipulation was gone, replaced by cold anger. You can't do this to us, Pearl. Madison is pregnant. We don't have anywhere else to go. This is cruel and vindictive. Cruel and vindictive, I repeated thoughtfully. Like packing someone's belongings without permission. Like threatening to have someone declared mentally incompetent. Like taking over someone's home and treating them like an unwelcome burden. That's not, we were trying to help you. Help me what, Derek? Help me disappear so you could have my house. Help me doubt my own sanity so I wouldn't question your financial manipulation. Help me lose my relationship with my daughter so she would choose you over me. Derek's true colors were emerging rapidly. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see your daughter happy. We built something good here and you're destroying it because you're jealous. What you built, Derek, was built on manipulation, lies, and financial abuse. And you built it in my house with my resources while treating me like garbage. Madison must have returned from her appointment because I could hear her voice in the background asking Derek what was happening. There was a long pause, presumably, while he explained the situation to her. When Madison came to the phone, she was crying. Mum, what's going on? Derek says you're kicking us out. But that doesn't make sense. Where would we go? Madison. That's your problem to solve. You're both adults who made the decision to force me out of my own home. Now you get to experience the consequences of that choice. But I'm pregnant, Mum. We can't just be homeless. You're not homeless, Madison. You have jobs, you have income, and you have 9 months to prepare for parenthood. What you don't have is the right to live rent-free in my house after the way you treated me. Madison's sobs were heartbreaking, but I forced myself to remember how easily she had supported Derek's plan to institutionalize me. Mum, please. Can't we work something out? We'll pay rent. We'll give you space. Derek is really sorry about how things went before. Madison. I gave you both a place to live when you needed help. I supported you financially and emotionally for almost a year. In return, you conspired to have me declared incompetent and removed from my own home. There's no coming back from that level of betrayal. Derek grabbed the phone back. Pearl, you're making a huge mistake. We know people in elder services. We have documentation of your declining mental state. If you try to live alone in that house again, We'll have to report our concerns for your safety." The threat was exactly what I had expected. "Derek, please do file those reports. I'd love to have a conversation with Adult Protective Services about how my mental state deteriorated so rapidly after you moved into my house, took control of my finances, isolated me from my support system, and created a hostile living environment. I'm sure they'd find that very interesting." Derek's voice became menacing. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Pearl. I have connections. I know how these systems work. You're going to regret this." "The only thing I regret, Derek, is not recognizing what you were doing to my family sooner. But I'm correcting that mistake now." I paused for effect. "You have 29 days remaining. I suggest you start packing." I hung up and turned off my phone. Through Rosa, who lived close to my old house, I would monitor their reactions over the next few days. Rosa had volunteered to be my eyes and ears in the neighborhood, and she was excited to watch Derek and Madison scramble to figure out their next move. The sense of relief and empowerment I felt was overwhelming. For the first time in almost a year, I was in control of my own life again. Derek's threats didn't scare me because I now had resources and legal support. His manipulation tactics wouldn't work because I was no longer isolated and dependent. Over the next week, Rosa provided entertaining updates about the drama unfolding at my former address. Derek had been making frantic phone calls and meeting with various people, presumably trying to find legal ways to fight the eviction. Madison had been seen crying in the front yard while Derek argued with her about their options. Most satisfying was Rosa's report that Derek had been forced to cancel several business meetings because he couldn't guarantee a professional environment for his home office. Potential clients were apparently less impressed with his business acumen when he had to explain that his current office space was temporary due to family housing complications. The neighborhood was also beginning to learn the truth about their living situation. Mrs. Patterson had mentioned to Rosa that she was confused about Derek's earlier claims regarding purchasing my house. Other neighbors were starting to ask questions about why Derek and Madison seemed so upset if they were the legitimate homeowners. Derek's carefully constructed narrative was falling apart, and his reputation in the community was suffering. This was particularly damaging for someone who relied on personal connections and perceived success to attract business opportunities. Meanwhile, my new life was flourishing in ways I hadn't imagined possible. My arthritis pain had decreased significantly now that my stress levels were manageable. I was sleeping better, eating healthier, and rediscovering interests and hobbies I had neglected during the months of family drama. But the best part was still to come. Derek and Madison had no idea about my lottery win, which meant they were about to receive a final shock that would completely reframe their understanding of our power dynamic. The victory was sweet, but it wasn't complete yet. The final weeks of Derek and Madison's 30-day notice period provided a fascinating study in how people react when their manipulative tactics stop working. Through Rosa's regular updates and my own careful observations, I watched their confidence crumble as they realized I was serious about reclaiming my home. Derek's first strategy was escalation and intimidation. He left several voicemails threatening legal action, claiming that I was violating some imaginary agreement we had made about their living situation. When I didn't respond to his calls, he showed up at Dorothy's house, demanding to speak with me about working out a reasonable solution. Dorothy, who had been waiting months for the chance to tell Derek exactly what she thought of him, met him at the front door with 40 years of suppressed sisterly protectiveness. "Derek, you have some nerve coming here after what you did to Pearl. She doesn't owe you a conversation, an explanation, or a place to live. You have 20 days to get out of her house. And if I see you bothering my sister again, I'm calling the police." Derek's second approach was manipulation through Madison. He convinced her to call me with increasingly desperate pleas about their housing situation, their financial struggles, and the stress that eviction was placing on her pregnancy. Madison's calls were heartbreaking, but I recognized Derek's coaching in her word choices and emotional appeals. "Mum, we've looked at apartments, but everything is so expensive and we need money for the baby," Madison cried during one call. "Derek says maybe we could stay just until after the baby is born. It would only be a few more months." Madison: "You chose Derek's side when he kicked me out of my own house," I replied firmly. "Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. I'm not changing my mind." By the third week, their situation became more desperate. Derek had apparently borrowed money from his business associates to pay deposits on rental properties, but his credit score and employment instability were making it difficult to secure housing. Madison was experiencing pregnancy complications that she blamed on stress, adding another layer of crisis to their situation. Rosa reported that Derek had been seen loading boxes into a moving truck during the middle of the night, suggesting he was trying to sell furniture and possessions to raise cash quickly. Madison had been spotted at several fast food restaurants, apparently interviewing for part-time work to supplement their income. The neighborhood was also witnessing Derek's dramatic personality change. Mrs. Patterson told Rosa that Derek had snapped at her when she asked how the move was going, showing a side of himself that contradicted his previous charming facade. Other neighbors were beginning to understand that Derek and Madison had been lying about their relationship with me and their rights to the property. On day 28, Janet Morrison called to inform me that Derek had attempted to file legal documents claiming adverse possession of my house. "It's a completely frivolous claim," Janet assured me. "He would need to prove continuous occupation for at least 21 years, plus several other requirements he can't meet. But it shows how desperate he's becoming." The morning of day 30 arrived with poetic timing. It was a beautiful spring day, and I was in my new garden planting roses when Janet called to confirm that Derek and Madison had vacated the property by the midnight deadline. The house was empty, and I was free to reclaim my original home whenever I was ready. I decided to wait until afternoon to visit the house, giving myself time to prepare emotionally for whatever condition they had left it in. Rosa offered to accompany me for moral support, and together we drove to my former address for the first time in over a month. The house looked smaller than I remembered, but it was still structurally sound. Derek had removed all the furniture and belongings that belonged to them, plus several items that had actually belonged to me, including my grandmother's china cabinet and my late husband's desk. The walls showed nail holes and scratches from hasty furniture removal, and several light fixtures were missing. But the house was empty, and it was mine again. Rosa walked through the rooms with me, shaking her head at the damage and missing items. "They took things that weren't theirs, Pearl. You should call the police." I considered it, but ultimately decided that pursuing Derek and Madison for property theft wasn't worth the continued drama. I had bigger plans that would make the missing furniture seem insignificant. That evening, I called Madison from the empty house. When she answered, her voice was exhausted and defeated. "Madison, I'm calling from the house to let you know that I've reclaimed my property and I'm aware of the missing items. I won't be pursuing legal action. But I want you to understand that your father's desk and my grandmother's china cabinet hold sentimental value that money can't replace." "Mum, we didn't steal anything," Madison protested weakly. "Derek said those things belong to both of us as family." "Madison, nothing in this house belonged to Derek. And after the way you both treated me, you forfeited any claim to family heirlooms." I let that settle before continuing. "I'm calling because I want you to know something that might help you understand the choices I've made over the past month." "What do you mean?" This was the moment I had been waiting for since the day they threw my belongings out the front door. "Madison, the day you and Derek kicked me out of my house was the same day I won the lottery. $2.3 million. The silence on the other end of the call lasted nearly a minute. When Madison finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "What did you say?" "I won the lottery jackpot on the worst day of my life. While you and Derek were packing my bags and discussing my placement in assisted living, I was carrying a winning ticket worth more money than we ever dreamed of." Madison was crying now, but these weren't manipulative tears. They were tears of recognition and regret. "Mum, why didn't you tell us?" "Because, Madison, the way you treated me when you thought I was powerless showed me exactly who you both really are. Derek didn't kick out a poor, helpless old woman. He kicked out a multimillionaire. And you supported him because you thought I had nothing left to offer you. We could have, if we had known. If you had known I was rich, you would have treated me differently. But that's exactly the problem, Madison. Love and respect shouldn't depend on what someone can give you financially." Madison sobbed harder. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't understand what Derek was doing. I thought we were helping you." "You thought you were helping me by having me declared mentally incompetent, by taking over my house, by isolating me from my friends and sister." I kept my voice calm, but firm. "Madison, I raised you to be better than that. I sacrificed everything to give you opportunities and education. And when Derek told you to choose between him and me, you chose him without hesitation. I love you, Mum. I made a terrible mistake. Please forgive me." "Madison, I will always love you because you're my daughter. But trust and respect have to be rebuilt, and that's going to take time. Derek showed me who he really is, and you showed me that your loyalty can be bought with promises and manipulation." Madison was quiet for a long time, then asked the question I had been expecting. "Where are you living now?" I smiled, looking around my beautiful new home. "I bought a house, Madison. A beautiful house with enough room for the family I choose to include in my life. People who love and respect me, whether I'm rich or poor, whether I'm young or old, whether I can give them something or not. Could Derek and I visit sometime?" The question broke my heart, but I wasn't ready to forgive and forget. Madison Derek will never be welcome in my home. He's shown me his true character, and I believe people when they show me who they are. As for you, we'll see. You're going to be a mother soon, and you need to decide what kind of values you want to teach your child about family loyalty and treating people with dignity. We talked for a few more minutes with Madison, apologizing repeatedly, and me listening, but not offering forgiveness or reconciliation. When we hung up, I felt sad, but not guilty. I had learned the painful lesson that love without boundaries is just enablement and respect. Without consequences is just wishful thinking. 6 months later, Rosa told me that Derek had left Madison when he realized there was no more money or property to gain from the relationship. Madison was working 2 part-time jobs and living in a small apartment near her workplace, trying to prepare for single motherhood. 2 years have passed since the day Derek and Madison packed my belongings and tried to throw me away. As I sit in my sunroom, watching the morning light filter through the stained glass windows of my beautiful Victorian home, I can honestly say that these have been the best years of my life. My new house became everything I dreamed it would be. The 4 bedrooms gave me space to create an art studio, where I've rediscovered my love of watercolor painting, a library where I host monthly book clubs, and 2 guest rooms for visitors who actually appreciate being here. The wraparound porch became my favorite place for morning coffee, and the garden has flourished under my careful attention. More importantly, I've built a community of genuine relationships that nourish my soul. Rosa and I have become close friends, sharing weekly dinners and supporting each other through life's ups and downs. My neighbors, the Hendersons and the Yamadars, have become like family bringing me vegetables from their gardens and including me in their holiday celebrations. Dorothy visits monthly, and we've taken 2 wonderful trips together to places I never could have afforded before the lottery win. I also started volunteering at the local senior center, helping other older adults navigate financial planning and elder abuse prevention. My experience with Derek's manipulation tactics has given me insights that help me recognize similar situations and connect people with resources for protection and support. My health has improved dramatically since removing the stress of living with Derek and Madison. My arthritis is manageable with proper care, and my doctor says I have the energy and vitality of someone 10 years younger. I wake up each morning feeling grateful instead of anxious, which has made more difference than I ever expected. About 8 months after they moved out, Madison started calling me regularly. At first, our conversations were stilted and painful, filled with her apologies and my cautious responses. But gradually, as we talked about her pregnancy and her struggles as a single mother, I began to see glimpses of the daughter I had raised. Derek had indeed left Madison when he realized there was no more financial benefit to be gained from their relationship. He disappeared one night, taking their savings and leaving Madison with unpaid bills and a broken heart. Madison later learned that Derek had been married twice before and had left both previous wives under similar circumstances when their usefulness to him expired. Madison gave birth to a beautiful daughter she named Emma. When she called to tell me about the birth, I could hear the exhaustion and fear in her voice, but also a new maturity that hadn't been there before. "Mum, I understand now what you tried to teach me about Derek. I understand what real love looks like compared to manipulation. I'm sorry it took me so long to see the difference." I started visiting Madison and Emma every few weeks, bringing groceries and baby supplies, helping with childcare when Madison had to work. These visits were carefully structured and limited, but they gave me hope that our relationship might eventually heal. Madison never asked me for large amounts of money, which surprised me, and suggested she was learning about independence and self-respect. When I offered to help with Emma's daycare expenses, Madison insisted on treating it as a loan and set up a payment plan to repay me. "I want Emma to grow up seeing that women take care of themselves and their responsibilities," Madison explained. "I want to be the kind of mother you were for me before I lost my way." The most meaningful conversation we had was on Emma's first birthday. Madison brought her to my house for a small celebration, and as we watched Emma play in the garden, Madison opened up about her relationship with Derek and the choices she had made. "Mum, I was so attracted to Derek's confidence and his big plans that I didn't see how he was isolating you and taking over your life. I thought he was protecting me by making decisions, but really he was just controlling both of us." She paused, watching Emma chase bubbles across the lawn. "I never want Emma to think that love means giving up your power to someone else." I told Madison about my own journey of learning to set boundaries and recognize manipulation. We talked about the importance of teaching Emma to value herself for who she is, rather than what she can provide for others. "The lottery money was a blessing," I explained, "but the real gift was learning that I don't have to accept poor treatment from anyone, even family members. I spent so many months questioning my own perception and making excuses for Derek's behavior because I wanted to keep peace with you." Madison nodded sadly. "I made you choose between your dignity and your daughter. That was cruel, and I'm still learning to forgive myself for it." Madison, forgiveness is a process, not a destination. I've forgiven you because holding anger was hurting me more than it was hurting you. But rebuilding trust takes time and consistent actions. Today, Madison and I have a relationship that's healthier than it's ever been. She's currently dating a teacher named Michael, who treats her with genuine respect and kindness. When she brought him to meet me, I was cautious but impressed by his humility and his obvious care for both Madison and Emma. He knows about Derek and what happened with us, Madison told me privately. He understands why you're protective, and he wants to earn your respect rather than demand it. Michael has spent months proving himself through small actions and consistent behavior. He helps Madison with household repairs, contributes fairly to shared expenses, and never tries to make decisions for her. Most importantly, he encourages Madison's relationship with me rather than competing for her loyalty. As for my relationship with Emma, it's pure joy. She's 2 years old now, bright and curious, and full of the kind of unconditional love that reminds me why family is worth fighting for when it's healthy. Emma doesn't know about the money or the family drama. She just knows that Grandma Pearl has a big house with a garden perfect for exploration and baking cookies together. I've used my lottery winnings wisely, investing most of it for long-term security while enjoying some immediate improvements to my quality of life. I travel more, donate to causes I care about, and never worry about money for necessary healthcare or home maintenance. But the most valuable thing the money bought me was choices. I can choose who to include in my life and who to exclude. I can choose to help family members without enabling them. I can choose to live independently and comfortably without depending on anyone else's approval or support. The lottery ticket I bought that terrible day when Derek and Madison kicked me out wasn't just a financial windfall. It was the tool that allowed me to reclaim my power and rebuild my life on my own terms. I still buy lottery tickets every week at Rosa's store, not because I need more money, but because those few minutes of conversation with Rosa have become a treasured routine. We talk about our families, our health, our dreams, and the small victories that make life meaningful. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not telling Derek and Madison about the lottery win immediately. Would our family crisis have been avoided if they had known I was wealthy? The answer is no. If Derek had known about the money, he would have become more manipulative, not less. He would have found ways to control my finances while treating me marginally better to maintain access to my wealth. Madison might have stayed with me out of financial interest rather than genuine love and respect. The way they treated me when they thought I was powerless revealed their true character. Derek showed me he was a manipulative predator who targeted vulnerable people for financial gain. Madison showed me that her loyalty could be purchased with promises and that she was willing to sacrifice my dignity for her own comfort. But Madison also showed me that people can change when they face the consequences of their choices. Her growth over the past 2 years has been genuine and impressive. She's learned to value integrity over convenience, independence over dependence, and authentic love over manipulative control. If you're watching this and you're dealing with family members who take advantage of your kindness, remember that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's enablement. People who truly care about you will respect your limits and treat you with dignity, regardless of what you can give them. If you're in a situation where someone is trying to control your living situation, your finances, or your relationships with other people, trust your instincts. Manipulation often starts small and escalates gradually, making you question your own perceptions and memories. And if you're someone who has made mistakes in how you've treated family members, remember that it's never too late to change. Madison's apology meant something because it was followed by consistent actions and genuine personal growth. Family isn't just about blood relationships. It's about people who lift you up, respect your autonomy, and love you for who you are, rather than what you can provide. Sometimes the family you choose is healthier than the family you were born into, and there's no shame in protecting yourself from people who don't have your best interests at heart. As for Derek, I heard through community connections that he moved to another state and is apparently targeting a different single mother with property and savings. I reported his pattern of behavior to appropriate authorities, but predators like Derek are skilled at avoiding legal consequences while causing maximum emotional and financial damage. I don't spend time thinking about Derek anymore. He was a painful lesson in recognizing manipulation, but dwelling on anger would only hurt my own peace and happiness. Instead, I focus on the beautiful life I've built, the genuine relationships I've cultivated, and the wisdom I've gained through surviving one of the most difficult periods of my life. I'm stronger, wiser, and more content than I've ever been. My name is Pearl. I'm 59 years old, and I want to end this story by asking you a question that might help you reflect on your own relationships and boundaries. Have you ever let someone treat you poorly because you were afraid of losing their love? Have you ever sacrificed your own dignity to keep peace in a relationship? Have you ever questioned your own worth when someone else treated you as less valuable than you know you are? If any of those questions resonate with you, please know that you deserve better. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect, genuine affection, and healthy boundaries. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not just for what you can give. And if you've made mistakes in how you've treated people you love, it's never too late to apologize. Change your behavior and rebuild those relationships on a foundation of respect and genuine care. Thank you for listening to my story. If it helped you think about your own life in a new way, please like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about resilience family relationships and finding strength in difficult times. I hope your own journey toward healthy relationships and personal empowerment is filled with love, respect, and the kind of peace that comes from knowing your own worth. Take care of yourselves and remember that every ending can be a new beginning if you're brave enough to choose yourself.